Let it be known, like, the WNBA was my summer job. My job was to play in Russia for 6 years and to play in China for 2 and to play in Turkey for 1. That's how I took care of my family.
Yes, I want to opt out.
The WNBA, you know, if you want us to be here, you have to pay it for it. It's business.
This is our opportunity to get it right.
What would I like to see? Zeros. A lot of zeros.
You get more for this than you do for the champion. Makes no sense. Someone help. I need help.
We just want the opportunity to play under a CBA that shows the growth that we've created this far. And so that's been important to us, very vocal about.
We're trying to reinvent the salary structure, first of all, especially in this current negotiation.
We're paying attention, everyone's paying attention. This is a business, this is about our players, and so if they're not beating us, then we're not gonna beat them.
You didn't play for money. You didn't, like, none of us played for money. It wasn't about that. I didn't even think of it. It was just like you played to prove your worth as a basketball player. But now it's like, imagine what it will do. So hopefully, like, that European mindset of like playing because you're getting paid.
Right.
Basically, hopefully the money motivates in this whole other way that we never had in the WNBA.
Here's the deal, guys. The WNBA is having a moment right now. We see record crowds, we see record ratings. The biggest stars in women's basketball that we've ever seen are taking the court night in and night out. But here's the thing. While the game is thriving on the court, well, off the court, there is a battle that really could change everything. Right now, the league and its players are locked in tense negotiations over a new collective bargaining agreement, which is the deal that governs just about everything. Salaries, roster size, travel, licensing rights, you name it, it covers it. And according to the players, the league's opening offer was, quote, a slap in the face.
I think we can focus on our players. In the union, we got a proposal from the league, which was honestly a slap in the face. And I think we really have to put an emphasis on the players that are in our league right now. But I love to see the league growing. I think, you know, adding these teams in Philly and Detroit, like, that's how amazing is that the league can grow. But how cool would it also be to have, like, a little bit expansion on the rosters? Like, let's focus on the teams that have everything set up right now, and maybe focus on the teams also that find excuses continuously to lack investment into their players before we focus on adding more to the grain of people that can't really be sustained.
This is a defining moment, not just for the WNBA, but for the future of professional women's sports in America. So today we're breaking it all down. How did we get here? What's at stake? And what happens if the two sides just cannot agree? All right, first up, let's get on the same page. What exactly is a CBA? Well, the CBA stands for Collective Bargaining Agreement, and in pro sports, it's essentially the rule book, a legally binding contract between a league and its players, union, that sets salary, benefits, working conditions, just about everything. So in terms of the WNBA, if there is no signed CBA, there is no WNBA played on the court. CBAs are pretty standard across American sports, and it's pretty standard for there to be tense battles when it comes to the players' union and the various leagues on an agreement for the CBA. Now, in the MLB, we saw several years ago players fighting for free agency, better free agency and better revenue splits, even going on strike in 1994 and part of 1995 as well. That strike ended up canceling 921 games. It wiped out the World Series in 1994, and it cost the league an estimated $580 million in losses. Yeah, sometimes CBA negotiations can go horribly wrong and can result in a loss of money. In basketball, in the NBA, the NBA has actually had 2 major lockouts in the last 25-ish years. And most recently, there was a period in 2011 that resulted in a delay in the NBA season due to the Players Association and the league battling over salary caps and revenue sharing. Now, these fights can be messy when it comes to the CBA, because at the heart of it it's about power. Who really runs a league? Is it the players who built the business, or is it the owners who fund it? And in the WNBA, the stakes cannot be higher. Why? Well, because profitability is finally within sight. The numbers are up, the league is thriving, and the players are saying their salaries need to reflect that growth. And quite frankly, these players are done waiting. So, what exactly are WNBA players asking for? Well, here's the deal. This isn't about charity, guys. In a lot of ways, this is about respect. It's about a fair share of the business that they built. Players want a larger share of revenue. They want higher bonuses for championships and awards. They want more roster spots and better travel. They want a say in expansion and media negotiations and a whole lot more. Last year, the WNBA announced a new media rights agreement that has been estimated to be worth $2.2 billion over the next 11 years. With additional deals with CBS and ION, that number could grow to around $3 billion when it's all said and done. Add in $250 million each from the 3 new expansion teams that were just announced in Philadelphia, Detroit, and Cleveland. And yet, the minimum salary in the WNBA is still $66,000, with the maximum being around $250,000 a year. Players have called this moment a defining moment, a chance to make a transformational deal for the WNBA and its players. Sydney Colson told the Las Vegas Review-Journal, "We believe it's imperative that our CBA reflects the growth of this league and that players share in those earnings." And Satu Sabli, who has been in negotiations, has called the first offer by the league a slap in the face. Even Caitlin Clark chimed in about her Commissioner's Cup celebration, saying, "Hey, tell Kathy, help us out on the money front when it comes to a WNBA championship."
You get more for this than you do for champion. Makes no sense. Someone help. I need help.
The message is clear, guys. The league is growing, but players aren't seeing enough of it, or at least in their opinion, they're not seeing enough of it. So, how did we get here? Let's talk about the history of WNBA CBAs. Now, this fight did not start overnight. It's been building for decades. When the WNBA tipped off in 1997, players had no real bargaining power. There was no union, no guaranteed contracts. Even star players made under $50,000 in their first year. That changed in 1998 when the WNBPA, which is the WNBA Players Association, was born. The players' representative body features player reps from each team and an executive committee leading the union. More on the current leadership status later on. By 1999, the first ever WNBA CBA was signed, which included an increase in the minimum salary for rookies as well as vets. It included year-round health and dental insurance. It included a maternity policy, guaranteed contracts that took place mid-season, royalties from licensed products, and even restrictions on signing former ABL players, as well as other things. In 2003, the players secured another CBA, but not without a fight. The NBA commissioner at the time and creator of the WNBA, David Stern, was actually threatening players to cancel the season if no deal was reached by April the 18th, 2003. Safe to say, a deal was made and free agency was introduced to the WNBA. And David Stern, as the leader he still had the upper hand as the WNBA ended up transitioning at that period of time from a single entity to individual franchise ownership, a thing that continues to this day. In 2008, we saw another CBA for the WNBA, which introduced further gains for the league. We saw yearly salary increases. We saw higher minimum and maximum pay. We saw a reduced number of core player designations. We ended up seeing individual hotel rooms be introduced for WNBA veterans, meaning that they no longer had to share, at least veterans did, the rookies and the younger players still had to share. We saw a revenue sharing mechanism be added as well, which meant that if teams could make approximately $2.5 million from ticket sales, players could then get a portion of that. But we also, at the same time, while we were seeing great increases in the WNBA, we were also seeing a retraction of sorts. We saw roster sizes get cut from 13 to 11 in 2009. The 2014 CBA included a 12-player roster maximum. We saw time off bonuses for players who decided to forego going overseas. More on that in just a second. We also saw players getting guaranteed 2 tickets to each home and away game. We saw added penalties for players missing training camp. And we saw an agreement that the players will not strike and the league will not lock out the players. Then came 2020, the real breakthrough. Players negotiated a landmark deal that raised the maximum salary nearly 80%. We saw added paid maternity leave. We saw a new in-season tournament get added, which is now known as the Commissioner's Cup. We saw a better free agency model for players. We saw improved travel with the 2020 CBA mandating premium economy seating on planes for all players for regular season flights. And we saw a bevy of a lot other things, including prioritization that is still a thing today. Kathy Engelbert at the time was still early on in her tenure in the WNBA. She called the deal historic, and truly, guys, the 2020 CBA deal absolutely was that.
The significance of announcing a new collective bargaining agreement, it is really the WNBA. Our vision for the W is really surrounding 3 pillars. One was player first. So I think this collective bargaining agreement really drives a player first agenda. And you see from so many of the provisions of this agreement how invested we are in making these players feel like they are professional athletes.
I think that what is so amazing about the executive committee we have is so many of us have many years under our belts. And we also understand that a lot of the components of this agreement won't directly affect us in the long term. So we really wanted to ensure that this agreement was for the players today, the players tomorrow, and the players to come.
I think of it as like this foundation we set for the next generation to build on to get, even better deals, even more out of it. But I think we really tried to lay the groundwork, knowing that, we're standing on the shoulders of the women who came before us, and we really want to be that next stage for the women that come after us.
We're very optimistic that we have this moment in women's sports. We have this momentum around the WNBA and our great players. And then we have this movement around women's empowerment that I think is so important for us to capitalize on all 3 of those, the moment, the momentum, and the movement, to drive the league to the next level.
I think the element of the agreement that truly I'm most proud of has a lot to do with the benefits for mothers, for active playing mothers, because we've always kind of stood as a league that is forward thinking in our stance in the community and in social impact. And I think we've done a really great job of including some benefits that'll make it easier to be a mom in the WNBA.
Me personally, I know everyone's going to talk about salary and compensation, and we're really excited that we've made huge strides so that we can create a league, a business that keeps the top talent in the world here.
We need the whole ecosystem stepping up. So we have launched a platform called WNBA Changemakers to get a collective of companies who want to support these women and want to drive women's leadership to the next level, not only in their companies, but also in sports. And so Changemakers are really going to make a lot of the financial commitments and the wellness commitments and the benefits commitments a bit easier for us, because they're going to support our league in our transformation. They're going to support us in our branding and marketing, and yes, they're going to support us with some money as well.
It feels really much like we've reached kind of a finish line in this point that we can be proud of.
20 years ago, we would have never been able to say, hey, I really want my life to be built around basketball only. And that went into my decision. For the people that don't know, I left after 3 years of college. And the CBA agreement was definitely going into my decision because I am able to get more money in the WNBA now. And even, later on, you guys don't have to think about that yet, but maternity rights or, even new travel experiences, it just comes, like there are just so much more experiences you get from that new CBA agreement that it makes sense more and more and more to focus your life around basketball.
But here's the deal. The 2020 CBA, while it was historic, it was also just the beginning. Because now, just 5 years later, players say that the league has outgrown the deal. The CBA was supposed to go until 2027, but players opted out in 2024 to force the issue.
CBA. It is a landmark CBA. And even as we signed it, we knew, all of us knew, that there was still more work to be done. The time for us to think about whether or not we will opt out. From the player perspective,
Yes, I want to opt out.
Honestly, as players, we should, because we'll be able to have more negotiating power.
Even though we've gotten so much more than what we had, it's still not enough.
All right, real quick, guys, just to hone in on the opt-out for the WNBA. In the collective bargaining agreement, which you can read the entire thing, I went through it, went through the entire thing just to kind of prep for this this stream, and I want to go to one paragraph, sort of towards the bottom part of the agreement. It says, this agreement, which was the one that was agreed upon in 2020, it said this agreement shall be effective from January 17th, 2020, and shall continue in full force and effect through October 31st, 2027, or if later, on the day following the final playoff game of the 2027 season, provided that the WNBA and the Players Association shall each have the option, exercisable by providing written notice on or before November 1st, 2024, to terminate this agreement effective October 31st, 2025, or later on this day following the final playoff game of the 2025 season. So, to make sense of that all that means is that the WNBPA put in that opt-out at an early enough time, so that way the current collective bargaining agreement is over on October 31st, 2025, or following the last playoff game of this year. So, a strike is on the table, a lockout is on the table, anything is on the table after October 31st, 2025. Straight from the CBA. And if you all are curious about the page number, that is on page number 225 of the 2020 CBA. Okay, let's continue on.
Yes, I want to opt out.
The WNBA, if you want us to be here, you have to pay us more. It's business.
Everyone, buckle up. It's about to be a fun day.
this is our opportunity to get it right.
Which leads us to the money, guys. On paper, the WNBA has never been stronger financially in terms of merch sales, ticket revenue, media revenue. Like, lots of money is pouring into the WNBA. But the league is private, and they don't open their books. Not to players, not to fans, not to the media. So, even with all this growth, the league still is not profitable. With the Washington Post reporting last year that the WNBA was going to lose $50 million in the 2024 season. But even with the losses that the WNBA is still going through, profitability feels closer than ever. And players are asking, okay, well, if we're making more money as a business, where is the money going? Who's receiving the money? And before we answer that, quick side note, let's talk about international players and the overseas impact in the WNBA. If you watched the WNBA historically, you know that when a season ends, we see an influx of WNBA players heading overseas to both Europe and Asia to play for money during the offseason. And sometimes players have made 2 to 4 times their WNBA salary, with Diana Taurasi most notably missing out on a WNBA season because her team overseas paid her $1 million. Right? This is a thing, and it has been a thing for a long time. Now that the WNBA has a prioritization rule that forces veteran players to be back at training camp by a certain time, we've seen some changes with players deciding to go overseas, right? Now we also have 2 domestic leagues as well, 2 domestic options for players to participate in Athletes Unlimited and Unrivaled.
Seems like from what we've kind of gotten a glimpse of, Unrivaled's really offering an unparalleled experience for the players. I'm curious, do you see or do you think that's going to have an impact on CBA negotiations at all?
I think it puts pressure for sure. It's been amazing. A lot of people had a lot of things to say about Unrivaled, about how it would be the first season, but it's been great. So I'm grateful that they're able to put some pressure on the things that we deserve and the things that we're pushing for.
More on Unrivaled in a bit. This CBA, guys, is about making the WNBA competitive enough financially so that players don't actually have to choose to go overseas, and players don't necessarily have to play in another league to live. All right, now this leads us to the big question. Who runs the WNBA? Well, the WNBA structure is slightly complicated, I would say. The league does have a commissioner similar to Adam Silver, who is the commissioner of the NBA. The WNBA has Kathy Engelbert. But Kathy Engelbert does not fully control the league's future. The reason why is because the WNBA does not own itself. They do not fully own itself. The NBA and the teams of the NBA completely own the NBA. However, the WNBA is owned by 3+ entities. We have the NBA, who owns 42%, reportedly, according to Sportico, I should say. The NBA owns 42% of the WNBA. WNBA team owners own another 42%. And then outside investors own the rest. Remember, guys, early on in Kathy Engelbert's tenure, we ended up seeing the WNBA have a massive investment run that led to a whole bunch of outside investors jumping into the WNBA and taking a piece of that pie. And so 42, the rest. That is the split when it comes to the WNBA in terms of ownership, which means that players are negotiating with a divided group of stakeholders, guys. And that ownership split also explains why players' percentage of revenue will always be smaller than in the NBA. It will never be equal because the WNBA does not take 100% of the revenue. It is split. The WNBA only takes 42% of the pie. And so therefore, they don't have as much to give players because they don't own the whole thing. And so that's one thing that a lot of people don't talk about as much, and I wanted to make sure to bring out here. So let's talk about current negotiations. Where do we stand? Well, a source from Front Office Sports says that the players have drawn a line in the proverbial sand. They say that meaningful progress needs to happen by the WNBA All-Star Game, which is right around the corner on July the 19th. Now, what happens if meaningful progress is not made by July 19th? Well, we don't know. But there is one thing that is possibly on the table, which is a strike. The league could try to weather the storm, and say, you know what, we're gonna keep negotiating, but the league is gonna get what we want. Okay. And players could say, you know what, we're gonna hold out, and they could risk ceding their best chance at a real push for structural change. Because the players opted out of the last deal. In the 2020 CBA, there was a clause that said that the WNBA players could not strike, and there was a clause that says that the league could not lock out the players. However, since the players opted out of their deal, a strike is definitely on the table, even though no one really wants that, including the players. Nafisa Collier said that no one wants a walkout, but we have to stand firm in what we deserve.
There's been a lot of conversation here lately about a potential walkout. What are your thoughts on that? Because I feel like everything's on the table when it comes to the CBA, but specifically with that, people have been talking a lot about it. So what are your thoughts?
And it's something that we're talking about internally, like to, be prepared for. Of course, no one wants that situation to happen, but I do feel like there's some topics that we have in mind that, we have to stand strong in what we believe in too. We have to stand up for what we feel is right and what we feel we deserve. And so while we don't want that situation to happen, of course, I think we're prepared for any possibility right now.
I need to get in the field.
You need to come to the
I
meeting.
gotta get in the meetings because I'm hearing they don't give us, if y'all don't give us what we want, we sit out.
That's a possibility. A strike for the WNBA would mean no games. It'd mean no paychecks, no season until a deal is done. And this could also be a league thing where the league could say, you know what, we're going to impose a lockout on you. So, what do you think, guys? If players walked out to demand what they call fairness, would you still support them? Or would you just say, you know what, agree to whatever. I want my games back. Let me know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I really want to hear what you all think about this issue. Now, what's ahead? Well, when we think about what's left it's a lot more negotiations, right? A lot more negotiations. This is probably a good time to let you all know who is at the table in these negotiations fighting for the players. And that is the WNBPA, the WNBA's Players Association. Their executive committee is led by Madam President Nneka Agumbike of the Seattle Storm. We got Kelsey Plum as the first vice president, and Kelsey is, of course, with the LA Sparks. We have Elizabeth Williams of the Chicago Sky serving as the Players Association secretary. We got Brianna Turner serving as the WNBPA's treasurer. She is with the Indiana Fever. And then we have Vice Presidents Alicia Clark, also of the Seattle Storm, Nafisa Collier of the Minnesota Lynx, and Brianna Stewart of the New York Liberty. We also have each team, each of the WNBA's 13 teams each have player representatives as well. They have 2 player representatives from each team, a primary and an alternative. And they're really just trying to make sure that every locker room has a voice when it comes to the Players Association. And guys, just so you all know, the WNBPA's website is not up to date. However, here's what they currently have on their website for player representatives. And note, some of these players are no longer on the teams that they were in, and some of these players are not even in the league. But this is on the WNBPA's website as of Sunday, July the 6th. All right, we got Naz Hillman and Haley Jones for the Atlanta Dream. We got Diamond Shields and Isabel Harrison for the Chicago Sky. We got Dejanay Carrington and Olivia Nelson-Adota for the Connecticut Sun. We got Arike Ogunbowale and Kalani Brown for the Dallas Wings. We have Aaliyah Boston and Katie Lou Samuelson for the Indiana Fever. Chelsea Gray and Asia Wilson for the Las Vegas Aces. Azarae Stevens and Alexi Brown for the LA Sparks, Diamond Miller and Bridget Carlton for the Minnesota Lynx, Kayla Thornton and Sabrina Ionescu for the New York Liberty. We got Sophie Cunningham and Natasha Cloud for the Phoenix Mercury. We got Victoria Vivians and Joyner Holmes for the Seattle Storm. And we have Steph Dolson and Aaliyah Edwards for the Washington Mystics. As I told y'all, this is not up to date because some of these players are not on the same team and some of these players literally are not even in the league. So I'm saying those names because they are on the official website for the WNBPA. I don't know exactly who is participating in these players, as player representatives, because clearly this is not totally up to date. But I just wanted to mention it anyway. If you're curious about the WNBPA's staff, they do have some staffers. They got Terry Carmichael Jackson as their executive director. They got Jane Appel Marinelli as the SVP of player relations. Guys, do y'all remember Jane Appel? Jane Appel was a hooper. I was a big fan of Jane Appel back in the day. We got Aaron Drake as their senior advisor and legal counsel. We got Michael Goldshaw as the SVP of Business and Legal Affairs. We have Andrea Bermudez as the Managing Director of Operations. And then we got Matt Pritchett as the Executive Assistant. These are the people who are all involved, making sure that the league and the players, or primarily the players, get what they are owed. Now, let's continue on. One wrinkle that we have in this whole thing when it comes to the leadership of the WNBPA, and something I just have to mention because it's worth mentioning, is the optics around Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier co-owning Unrivaled, while at the same time leading negotiations, helping to lead negotiations for the WNBPA. And if you all don't know, Unrivaled is a off-season league that features WNBA players, some of the top WNBA players in the league. And, some have questioned if there is a conflict of interest. There was a tweet that went pretty viral around both Nafisa and Breanna Stewart and their engagement with the WNBPA, as well as their ownership in Unrivaled. And Nafisa Collier was basically like, hey, it's not a conflict of interest. The allegation was that, this is probably a conflict of interest, but Nafisa was like, hey, so let me get this straight. While everyone else is enjoying fireworks, you were thinking about how me and Stewie, of all people, are conspiring to force a lockout that would result in less money year-round for WNBA players. Question mark, question mark. And then she laughed about it. Well, laughing emojis and whatnot. Here's the thing. The reason why I'm mentioning this is not because I just want to talk about Twitter drama, because if y'all watch the channel, y'all know that I ignore almost all Twitter drama. I only mention stuff that I think is relevant to the conversation, and I actually think this is relevant. The reason why is because, no, I don't believe that Stewie and Fee are trying to force a lockout. But I will say, it does not look good when you have owners of an off-season league, Unrivaled, that is meant for WNBA players, to also be at the forefront of negotiations for a new CBA. Here's the deal. I don't believe anything nefarious is happening. I don't believe there's a conspiracy. However, I do believe the optics matter. And conflicts of interest, whether intended or not, are absolutely a thing and is important to actually state, right? So again, to be clear, I don't believe they're doing anything nefarious. I do think optics-wise, it's a bad look to have two co-owners of even though it's an off-season, still kind of rival league, to be helping to lead negotiations for the WNBA's Players Association. Optically, it just looks bad. But do I think they're intending to do anything nefarious? No. I believe they have the best intentions. However, it does not look good. I'm just saying. So, to conclude this whole thing, if the players get this thing right and the league gets this thing right, the WNBA could set a new standard, not just for women's sports, but for all of sort of professional sports. A true partnership between players and their league. It could be something that could be a great sight to see. So, at the end of the day, this fight is not just about money. Money is a huge part of this fight. Absolutely a huge part. Do these players want to see more zeros in their pockets? Absolutely. But at the heart of this, yes, money, but also value. It's about respect. And it's about power. This is a defining moment, not just for the WNBA, but for women's sports. This is a defining moment for everyone who believes that greatness deserves to be valued, not just in words, but in deeds as well. So, that's the stream. That is the Players Association and their battle with the WNBA when it comes to the collective bargaining agreement. Talks are still being had, and we'll see how this thing continues to progress. As new reporting comes through, I will make sure to keep you all abreast of what's happening, and let me know what you think. I tried my best to be as thorough as I possibly could, trying to give you all what you all need to know about the Players Association agreement. What do you think? Let me know your comments. Did I miss anything? Is there anything else you want me to add? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And I will see y'all in the next one. Thank y'all so much for rocking with me, and y'all have a good one. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.
I've been a part of this league for 25 years and was a part of the first CBA negotiation where really all we wanted, and Rebecca probably remembers this, was insurance all year round, right? To then having the ability to have your own hotel room, right? And then, now we're in charter flights, and it's just the growth of the league. And I think when you look back at other professional leagues, it's about this time frame in the trajectory where things begin to change, and things are changing rapidly for our league. Having been a part of a lot of those negotiations as a player and been on the other side as a coach, the players deserve opportunities to grow with this league. And I'm proud of them for continuing to voice their opinions, and I'm also proud of our organizations and our leadership at the league for understanding how we grow it, right? And there's a process to grow it.
To ask you about the future of the Players Association, the potential next CBA. My MBA thesis was on what is coming next, and after charter flight and high value media deal, I would say that 90% of the people said that revenue share was the main concern for players. Do you agree with that? And do you think that with this new media deal, it is more likely that the WNBA players are going to have a more equitable share of the league revenue?
I think that I do agree that players are concerned about revenue share amongst many other things. I can say that players do want to have their value reflected in CBAs moving forward.
On behalf of my teammates and every member of our union, I want to be clear, we remain committed to negotiating the next CBA with the league and the team in good faith and privately. But we do want to set the record straight, not for the headlines, but for the fans who support us and deserve transparency about what's at stake.
What's at stake? This is a defining moment in the WNBA. As the league grows, it's time for the CBA that reflects our true value. We are fighting for a fair share of business that we built, because it is a business. We are fighting for anything. We are not fighting for anything that's unreasonable. When it comes to salary and revenue share, we're fighting to share in the growth that we've created. Every other category across the business has grown. That's media rights, ticket sales, and team values. The only thing that is still capped is our player salary, which is insane. We deserve a fair share, and we're demanding salaries to reflect our true value in our business. So we're 25 days away from All-Star, just under 4 weeks. That's the clock is ticking. We came out here and played most of every night in front of these fans. We will continue to do that. But the current system is unsustainable for us, and that means it's unsustainable for the business that we have created. Nothing short of transformational change will do for the future we see, and the fans clearly that will see. So we're paying attention. Everyone's paying attention. This is a business. This is about our players. And so if they're not meeting us, then we're not going to meet them.